Oh, Jeremy's out in the attendees. Oh, do let him in. All right. All right. So then I think we have everybody we're gonna have for now. So I'll read the script. Pursuant to Government Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GL 30A, section 18, and the governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Medfield Warrant Committee is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. As a reminder, persons who would like to listen or view the meeting while in progress may do so by following the instructions on the agenda and the meeting notice. And for the first time in Warrant Committee history, we are being recorded, my friends, for future viewing enjoyment. So, all right, so just to kind of jump in, Christine's probably going to join a little bit later. She had a conflict till about 7:30, but I know that Jeremy has a potential conflict at 7:30. So without further ado, Newton did send around 2 sets of minutes today. Did everybody get a chance to look at those?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes.
I do not have any comments on the July ones because I wasn't there. Does anybody have any comments on those?
No.
Do we have a motion about those minutes then?
Motion
I move that the minutes of the July 6, 2020 meeting be approved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, so roll call, Newton,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Amanda,
Aye.
Jeremy,
Aye.
and I'll abstain just because I wasn't there. So that passes. And then for the minutes from October 5th, I believe it was, does anybody
Yes.
have any questions or comments on those?
No.
Very well done.
Okay,
Oh,
do
thank
we
you.
have a motion?
I move that the minutes of the October 5th, 2020 warrant committee meeting be approved.
Second.
Second.
So Newton,
Yes. Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
and Jeremy. I think you put yourself on mute, Jeremy.
Whoops, yes, sorry.
And I vote yes. So those also.
Sorry.
Excellent. Thank you,
yes.
everybody.
Okay. So I will give a couple of quick updates and then Nick can walk us through the spreadsheet that we went through. We have on our agenda the budget from last year, the budget for this next year, as well as talking about the capital budget. So before we kind of dive into the spreadsheet that Nick has, I'll just give you an update as what has happened in the last week. So Ed and I, along with Christine and Nick, met with Megan Glenn and Mike La Francesca and Jeff just to talk a little bit about the spreadsheet that Nick is going to show you, because my idea is that we've been having these spreadsheets whenever we use them, but we don't normally get these until January or early February. So when we start to talk about the numbers. So the idea was to come up with a spreadsheet that everyone kind of agrees with, and it has all the data that everyone wants to see in it, so that we can use it as kind of like a dashboard for us. So it has the first tab for the budget and then going forward. So the one that Nick is going to walk us through tonight, that we all kind of agreed upon on Friday, that has the information we all want to see, is going to have not only the kind of the whole budget pieces, but it's going to have all those backups. So we're going to have information on the capital budget and the school budget and the town budget and everything in there. And so what I'd really like from our group, after you see it and after Nick's gone through it, if there's other information that you think would be good as we go through this process, like let us know and we can talk about adding additional tabs, so that way we're kind of all on the same page. And that's my little spiel about that. Does anybody have any questions before we just kind of dive in and look at it a little bit?
Nope.
Okay. Tell you, Nick.
Okay, good evening. Let me pull up my screen here. I'll share it even though I know most of you have received. So if it's too small or something, just let me know. I can only, it's hard when you're sharing your screen to kind of tell what you can see. So as Sharon indicated, this is kind of the landing main tab, which will be something similar to what you've seen in the past. I've just kind of reformatted it slightly to, in my mind, to be a little bit more clear. And you'll see we do the revenues up top, get to a total revenue number, then just for a quick overview, go through all of our expenses by category, the town departments, schools, other appropriations and our other articles, and get to our final numbers down below. So that's just kind of what the first tab will be. The other backup tabs here, just to run through them quickly, we have local receipts. So I have 10 years of local receipt information. We had provided this in that binder that we gave the warrant committee members last year, but this is just going to be all in the same Excel workbook this year. And if I can, you can see over on the right, I know it's pretty small, is we did load in kind of our estimate as of right now, included what we approved last year with the fiscal 21 budget that went to town meeting. And then you can see our prior year actual, which is just about final. So you can see where we landed in comparison to recent previous years. I've also loaded the other available funds tab. So I'm just going to jump back to the main budget worksheet tab. You'll see that there is a line called other available funds. That's the math that comprises this. This is one of the more confusing components of what goes into our revenue. So if perhaps we want to dedicate some time to it at another meeting, I can walk through each line a little bit more in detail, but essentially these are revenues that we take in. A lot of them are dedicated to specific purposes, so not necessarily available to the general fund for regular town operation and school operations each year. Mostly they're dedicated to a variety of reasons, primarily offsetting debt, and others go to, like you'll see the bottom one here is the money we take in for cable TV, for Medfield TV. We take it in as a revenue and we appropriate it out at town meeting. So it's not money that's available for anyone to spend within the town, but it's represented on this tab here. So that's just kind of an overview there. It gets a little tricky to go too deep into the weeds there. On the fiscal 22 capital budget, this is just what's been floated so far with the capital budget committee. We are meeting again this Thursday morning to go through this in a little bit more detail. So this will be fine-tuned, but this just gives you a rough outline of where requests came in. And it just as a reminder, last year, not much capital at all was funded. So it means there was a lot of carryover from fiscal 21, and we did develop a 5-year plan. So department heads had put forward projects that they wanted funded in fiscal 22. So we have the problem where fiscal 21 had a number of projects that weren't funded, and then we had a full list of projects for fiscal 22. So that's kind of where the capital budget committee is, and we're going to wade through what those requests were and come up with a list and some ideas for funding. The last tab is town budget. This is something we did provide to everybody last year. It's also on the town website. This just shows a couple of years of actuals. The fiscal 20 number is not, that's just what's been approved. It's not finals yet. We'll update it as we go. And then it gives you your fiscal 21 approved in this column. And then we copied and pasted for fiscal 22 for the requests, but nothing, that's not really anything real right now. That's just kind of a level fund request at this point. So if you're interested in specific departments, what their final budgets were, that'll be all included on this tab for you. So that's the tabs. I'll go back to the main worksheet and just go kind of from top to bottom to explain what some of our assumptions are.
And then just before you do that, Nick, I just wanted to mention to everybody, by the next time we have this spreadsheet, we will also have a school tab. Because we didn't want to put up kind of what we had without the actuals. So Nick is working with Mike on the school tab. So the next time we have this, we'll have that.
So just as the caveat with this, and as we've kind of explained, is it's October 27th. We're basing the numbers that we have here on, a lot of them are estimates, and I'll flag those for you just because we don't have real numbers quite yet on much, but we just wanted to put in some realistic kind of conservative estimates so that we would have a place to start from when we're talking about the budget. So on the revenue side, the fiscal 22 budget incorporates the increase from last year for the tax levy, which is a typical 2.5% increase. It also includes our updated new growth number, our final new growth number for fiscal 21, which was a good number in excess of where we had anticipated it coming in. So we had a pretty good year in fiscal 21, despite where our expectations were on new growth. So we like that. On the debt exclusions, so debt exclusions are the debt supported projects that are financed by taxes on everybody's property taxes. This is declining at the moment. Obviously, with the Dale Street School project on the horizon, that'll change. But debt exclusions are, revenues that are dedicated to debt. It's not general fund monies that can be used for anything. So this number right here is where we expect it to be. However, if Dale Street does move forward and we do some borrowing, that number might change, but it would go directly to debt. So it's kind of already called for and accounted for. On other revenues, we're not putting anything in for any overrides at the moment. The building stabilization fund override here, this is that annual $1 million that was approved a few years ago. It can be increased by the Board of Selectmen by 2.5% a year. We are accounting for that 2.5% increase. This goes directly to the municipal building stabilization fund that is used for capital projects on both town and school facilities. The state aid number that we've decided to build this budget around is level funded from both fiscal 20 and fiscal 21. As we have mentioned, we've been informed that the state will adopt a fiscal 21 budget that level funds state aid from the prior year. And for right now, for the starting point, we're going to carry that number forward into fiscal 22 until the governor reduces his fiscal 22 budget, which we expect at some point in January. Local receipts, I had mentioned that briefly. We had budgeted about 3.7 million for the fiscal 21 budget. We're keeping that about the same with some slight adjustments. And this is a number that will continue to adjust through the year as we see how this current year goes. Primarily, local receipts are mostly the motor vehicle excise taxes that are paid. If people are buying new cars, we can expect a higher number. If they're not, we can expect a not quite as high a number. And meals taxes are another big piece. Right now, we're running slightly above 50% where we had been on meals taxes. With the restaurants, I think they had a pretty good summer. We're hoping that they're able to keep business going this winter, but we all know that's a little bit of a different world right now. The other available general fund tab I referred to, and the detail is in the tab below. This is declining over time, mostly because our debt service is declining over time. So some of the stuff that offsets debt goes down. Building stabilization fund, this is where we pay out of the stabilization fund. So we transfer money into it and then we take money out. The 845 figure is how much we have written down for requests in fiscal 22. That number has not been finalized by the capital budget committee, but that's the starting point where we had included in that 5-year capital plan. The revolving funds, these are more just so we show what we're using from the revolving funds. As a reminder, on ALS revolving fund, last year we took $150,000 out of it to offset the fire department budget. We anticipate being able to do that again this year. So I know that was part of the conversation around ALS a few years ago when the town went that direction. So we are happy that we're able to start offsetting our fire department budget with the ALS revenues. The last number that we have on the revenue side is what is paid to the general fund by the water and sewer enterprise funds. They pay us back for costs that are paid out mostly under the benefits. So health insurance, OPEB, and other retirement benefits are paid out by the general fund and paid back by the enterprise fund. The other big component of that is debt, where the debt number is carried here under expenses. Enterprise fund, they pay their water and sewer debt back to us. So that's what that number is here. Again, like the debt exclusions figure, we expect that to increase because of the water treatment facility plant that will be coming forward in spring for approval. That would be a water enterprise fund supported project, would add some debt. So we would expect an increase there to pay for that project through the water and rates. That's just kind of a high level where we're at right now for revenues. On the expense side, just to kind of start incorporating some changes, we have a 5% increase on workers' comp. So we're just budgeting that in now. For property and liability, we budgeted a 5% increase again, placeholder numbers, because those typically do increase year over year. 111F, this is our fire and police medical disability injured on duty insurance that we are budgeting about a 10% increase, and that may go up a little bit more. As you know, we were not fully staffed in the police department for a bit there, and now we are close to fully staffed. We had a meeting with Maya, our insurance, who we purchased our insurance through, and they indicated that it's a little too early to start pegging in percent increases and cost estimates, but we're carrying those now. And as we, in the next month or two, we expect to get some rough outlines so we can refine those numbers a little bit. Life insurance, we're not expecting an increase this year as we did have one last year, but again, that's not a huge budget item for us. Unemployment, we did budget an increase in unemployment. We are experiencing higher than usual unemployment claims. We expect that to continue. And obviously with the fiscal 22 budget, depending on how it shakes out with potential layoffs or not, we may have to increase this number or reduce it just based on where we think fiscal 22 will fall. So we have budgeted an increase for now, but knowing this is one of those accounts that we may come back to based on how the year goes and what the broader economy looks like. On health insurance, if you'll recall, we level funded health insurance from fiscal 20 to fiscal 21. That was partly because we had reached an agreement with all of our unions to change some of our plan design for the health insurance plans. That resulted in a premium decrease for both town and employees. So, we expected to secure some savings there, so we felt comfortable level funding it. We are a little bit higher this year on health insurance compared to last year, despite that agreement with the with the unions to change the health insurance plan design. And right now we're budgeting at about an 8% increase. We met with Maya, who again, we purchased our insurance through, on October 15th. And they said, trend on health insurance right now is anywhere from 7 to 8%. And they did indicate some unclarity in the health insurance market because of COVID. We did receive a credit on health insurance in July because of lack of use of, a lot of surgeries were postponed when everything was going on earlier this spring. That's changed over the year. So they need some time to give us a better idea. So again, this is something that we'll revise as we go through the budget process, as we receive more information. On OPEB, we level funded OPEB from fiscal 20 to 21. Our financial policies do call for a 10% increase year over year to keep paying down our OPEB liability. So to start this year, to start this budget, we're including that 10% increase, which would be $42,500 to stay in line with our financial policies. These federal mandates are mostly the Medicare taxes, which we've budgeted at a 5% increase over the prior year. And then lastly is county retirement. Over the last 5 years, I'm just trying to look at the numbers, we're looking at annual increases about 9.5% on our payment to the Norfolk County retirement system. And so we've budgeted 9.5% increase right now. We'll typically receive information about our assessment around January. So we'll come back then with a hopefully a final number. So those are our insurance and then our town and school employee benefits there. Again, as I have indicated, the debt we're seeing decline over time. If we added no projects, we would expect to see this decline over the next few years until we were just really paying the public safety building and the town garage. But with the Dale Street School project, the water treatment facility plan, we will see these numbers adjust as we kind of know what the outlook is on those. But again, the water enterprise fund will pay for its project, and then the Dale Street School would be a debt exclusion. So not paid out of the operating budget. As you can see, we've included all of our town departments broken out. Changes there are, we added $1 for snow and ice per state law that budget has to go up every year. We've added, this is one of the changes from last year. One of the actual changes is a $75,000 for a public health nurse. And so I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Christine, or just I should keep going.
Just keep going and I can talk about it after.
Sure. The other changes are not quite a town department, but our stabilization fund. Last year, we did not make a payment into the stabilization fund. We just cut that out of the budget to put the money elsewhere. This year, we're including that in for the basis of our foundation budget here because we have to start thinking about building that back up, especially, and this is kind of in keeping with our financial policies, but also in light of the fact that we will be going out to market to issue debt. We will want to make sure we're hitting our financial policies though, so that we can secure and keep our bond rating. We don't want that to go down just as we're issuing substantial debt for a new school project. Schools, we haven't changed. Vocational school assessment will be adjusted later this year. Snow and ice, I've added $100,000 in. This is partly hopefully a jinx and maybe we'll have a light winter, but if we have a deficit in snow and ice, we'll have to account for it. So we've budgeted, if you look at back 10 years, 10-year average is about $100,000, but it's very much a hit or miss kind of budget account. And this is something we'll see coming over the course of the winter as we know how the winter is going. Minor changes on the state aid stuff, the chair sheet.
Mo told me it was going to snow on Friday. He's no longer allowed at the town hall. Just saying.
Just flakes.
Yeah, not a good stat. On capital budget, the $101,000 that I've included here, this is for the lease payments for 3 police vehicles and the fire engine. We have to make that or we return the equipment. So that's the only capital we've included as the starting point right now in this budget. A few of these others are housekeeping. So we're transferring, this is just to account for the money we took in above. We move money into the building stabilization fund. We take money out. The downtown improvements is everybody's favorite topic, the economic development for the downtown area that the selectmen request each year. Sewer betterment's paid in advance, so we're transferring some money we take into their stabilization fund. Again, just kind of ins and outs here. The monetary articles, this is one where we do have an increase, and that is $100,000 for the Medfield State Hospital. We are going to be at $0 by the end of this fiscal year in our revolving fund for the Medfield State Hospital operations. So that pays, primarily for keeping up the grounds and keeping the grass mowed and cleaning up in fall and spring. It also pays for maintenance, small maintenance projects on the different facilities up there. So unfortunately, we have not had any number of movie film companies coming in. And I know the big feed money for that account was the X-Men movie from a few years ago. So unless something surprises us in the spring, we are going to need significant funding for that maintenance. The Medfield State Hospital Development Committee is continuing to move forward on their process on issuing an RFP for that site. But I don't think, it's something that will be sold over the course of the next 12 to 18 months. It'll be in process, but the town will certainly still be maintaining it for a while. So that's kind of just very high level, just the assumptions that we have, keeping in mind it's very early in the year. Where that leaves us is about $33,000 with a deficit, and that's driven by the fact that we are not accounting for any free cash in this right now. Again, trying to meet our reserve fund policies, our financial policies. This budget does not include any use of free cash at the time at this moment.
And it also assumes that every budget that is kind of our operatings, every operating in the capital, well, all of the operatings are completely at zero increases, which that's our starting point. Does anybody have any questions?
Nick, this is Newton. What is the second tab FY22 expenses?
Oh, sure. I actually just threw this together right before the meeting. This is just
Okay.
the things we actually put into the budget. I just wanted to include them in
Okay.
the spot. So
Just a
it's
list.
hard to see them when they're buried in that broader spreadsheet. So this is, like I said, that stabilization, OPEB, and
That's
very
helpful.
actual increases.
Very good, thanks.
Sure.
I can just touch on the public health nurse expense. As you're listening to us talk about no new programs, no new people, and here I am adding a public health nurse. We currently have a contract with the Walpole Natick VNA, and they manage our public health nursing and our contact tracing. Obviously, that workload has increased tremendously with the pandemic, and we've decided it would be much more beneficial and efficient for the town. I know Jeff is in 100% agreement with me on this. If we had a public health nurse on staff so that we can have that employee-employer relationship when it comes to accountability, and it would help us provide additional information to the residents that we're not able to provide having a contract in place now. So we're pushing very much so for the public health nurse. I don't see this decreasing at any point, and there are additional items that we can have that public health nurse account for that aren't being done now.
Just to, on the public health nurse, there is money. So the CARES funding that is helping us defray our COVID expenses, that is only for expenses up through December 30th of this year. So it's not something where we could hire a public health nurse in
Right.
January and onward, because that money is not available under the way the program is currently laid out.
And our current contract with the VNA expires in June of 2021.
Does anybody have any questions? Or is there info? I know that, as I mentioned, we're going to add a school tab, and I think that we will start to add a reserve fund tab once we have kind of free cash certified and we know where we're kind of going with that. So those are two things that I think we'll definitely add over time. Does anybody have any other information that they'd like to have inside of this spreadsheet as we go through?
Well, I wasn't here at the beginning last year, but are we about the same place when we began last year's budget? Because we're starting off, as you said, we haven't even hit the operating expenses with any increase. We've just done what we think we know about with initial estimates. We're already a little bit below break even. So is that how we started on the very first pass last year, or are we? It seems
We didn't have a pass at this version last year. We never did one that had zero changes all the way through. So this,
okay.
I will say normally, yeah, we usually are starting off by like $1 million. I feel like if we put in changes for people, we're going to be off by way more than that. Don't you think, Christine?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just look at the schools, and if they go up just their steps, lanes, et cetera, you're probably looking at a little over usually about 3.3% right there. That's $1.2 million, and that's just payroll.
Right. Right.
So and that doesn't talk to the town side. So I mean, yeah, this looks like it's very bleak to begin with.
Yes. And that's kind of why I wanted to start at this point, because it's going to get even bleaker when we have the capital budget discussion too.
So
And
Sharon,
make
I
it
have a
bleaker when we talk about current year.
question, maybe for you or for Christine and or Nick. Have the department heads been given guidance, and what is that? And what schedule, so to speak, are they under to generate a first submission?
So we have, they've all been hearing us talk since the June town meeting about how concerned we are about fiscal year 22. I feel like we just got everything done for fiscal year 21, and we're going to have a harder time on fiscal year 22. I think we heard a little bit of that from Denise Garlick's presentation the other night. They've been advised that we're going to be starting off level funded, but they've been asked to start looking at their budgets for where we're going to have to make cuts. And that also depends on what we're going to do with capital. So we actually have an insurance presentation at a department head meeting tomorrow. And then those of the department heads that can be there are going to see this presentation again so that they understand exactly the revenue and expenditure, same as you're hearing them tonight. So they understand the whole budget picture as well. And I think that's something that's been lacking in the past. They've never really been given the whole picture, similar to how the warrant committee a few years ago was only given the expenditure side, not the revenue side. I'd like all the department heads to understand the entire budget revenue expenditure side in order to understand why we're going to have to come at them asking for cuts.
Okay, thank you. Is there a budget schedule out there, a timetable by which, again, first passes, revisions, et cetera, will be done?
I don't have a time on that. We'll have that for you for your next meeting.
Okay, thank you. So can we, and maybe this is for Sharon, should we get out there, Sharon, and start meeting with our department heads?
I think I'm going to talk that to Christine. Do you want to have
Yeah.
you with them first before we?
Yeah, if we're going to start meeting with them now, and normally in the past we've met with them starting in August, but given our budget situation, we didn't feel there was any need to run out and talk to them about new programs, new items they want to do. Everybody knows that they're going to be starting at a level funded point in time. So we'll start having those conversations with them in the next week or so, and then we'll turn it over to you to meet with them as well.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody else have any other questions about this piece of it? I know we're kind of going a little bit backwards. Like I wanted to start with next year with the spreadsheet just to kind of give everybody the very sobering picture of where we're at. And then if we don't have any more questions on this, then I'm going to ask Christine and Nick to talk a little bit about where we are right now with the FY21 and also see if Michael Francesca and Megan Glenn want to join in as panelists to be able to talk about where we are this year and how chapter 7 and everything.
Sharon, Jeremy's raising his hand.
Oh, okay.
Sharon, I just had one question.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the forecast for the FY22 budget and how we in the initial cut have no revenue supporting the budget from free cash. I'm curious what the schedule may be for the certification of free cash, when we might know that, just for awareness.
So actually, I think Nick talked to Joy today, and they're finalizing that this week, and it should be submitted to DOR before early next week.
Right. So we should have that for our next meetings.
Yeah,
because-
we can give you the number and won't be certified, but Joy is usually pretty on point with that, so we can at least give you the ballpark of where she is on that.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome.
Oh, now I see how you saw he raised his hand. I'm sitting here trying to figure that out. Now I see it. Okay. Okay. So where do you want to go next, Christine? Do you want to just kind of talk about where we're at with 21 and then see if?
Yeah, so I think that
Joanne?
Megan and Michael are going to be promoted. So let me promote
Okay.
them. Since they were at the meeting on Friday, I think they should there we go, get to speak on that. So in terms of local aid, as you know, I think we talked about it at your last meeting. We estimated a 10% reduction in what the governor had submitted for his January 20 budget. We have since been told that that number is going to be level funded. Fiscal year 21 will be level funded for fiscal year 20. So that creates $676,000 in additional revenue that was not planned for at our town meeting. So at the meeting on Friday that we had with Megan and Michael and our school little I don't want to call it cohort because that sounds too COVID-y, but our school group, I was asked to request from the Board of Selectmen to discuss at the meeting on the 10th, the opportunity for a special town meeting to appropriate additional local aid to the school budget. And I believe the chairman of the school committee has reached out and the chairman of the Board of Selectmen has agreed to hear that on the 10th. So I don't know if Megan and Michael want to talk more about the need for that. Or not.
I saw
Fine, too.
Michael unmuted, so I didn't know if he was going to jump in there or not.
That's what I was wondering.
I did hear from Jess that that meeting was going to take place, and I will not ask you again if you feel like that town meeting is going to go forward. I don't feel like I need to. I signed a warrant today for the amount of wipes and the amount of costs that it is costing us to keep the kids in the school, and I don't even know that I can say enough of how much that money is needed in our schools, and hopefully it'll all work out. That's all I can say, really. Michael, anything else to add?
I think Mike, go ahead, Michael.
Sure. So just a few things. So as of, oh God, last week, we were about $700,000 plus in just PPE and disinfectant and products that we had to purchase for COVID-19. We are projecting to spend between $20,000 and $30,000 a month in PPE and disinfectants for the schools moving forward. The CARES Act plus the 102 grant, which is the $225 per student that was allocated to Medfield, comes to an end on December 30th. So we're looking at a deficit in just the non-payroll side, close to about $250,000 from now to the end of the year. And that doesn't include the payroll side, where we had to hire extra staff due to COVID-19 because we have students that are in remote, and then paraprofessionals to assist in those services. So that's why we're asking for a joint meeting to discuss these COVID deficits that we're seeing. As of today, and things might change, we're not seeing any extra or additional federal relief from the federal government. Again, things might change in sometime in November, but we don't know that. But as of today, with the discussion that with the Department of Education, there is no additional federal relief coming to the state level. So a discussion has to be had. I know that there was an additional, I believe 500 plus in Chapter 70 that I think will help with some of the deficit that we're talking about due to COVID expenses.
Does anybody have any questions for Mike and Megan while we have them? I know that because Christine, you're planning on putting together a packet of information on
Yes,
different pieces.
the selectmen have requested, they would like a full listing of the amount of money that's been spent out of all of the additional sources of revenue that we've been given for COVID. So they want to see a complete accounting of that for the meeting on the 10th. My only concern is we are scheduled to set the tax rate the first week of November. So any
You mean December, right?
December, sorry, December. So any, oh God, it's been a day. Any special town meeting needs to take place then between November 10th and that first week in December. Any change to the budget that's going to use that additional revenue has to take place within that, and we need a 14-day notification for a special town meeting. And that includes logistically deciding where to have it, inside, outside. Am I buying a coat? What am I buying for my annual town meeting outfit is basically what I'm asking. So I'm a little concerned about logistics, but we can talk further about that on the 10th as well.
Are people from this committee all available on the 10th to be able to join that?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, then I think when Christine gets kind of the packet together for that, we'll distribute that and then we can have a greater discussion with the selectmen and the schools about that kind of all together. I mean, I know that we had talked about it at our meeting last week about the fact that if we were going to be increasing the school budget because of the 10%, that they now get that a special town meeting needed to happen for that. So we just kind of previewed what was the discussion for today. So that's where we're at on this. And do you have any other things you want to say about kind of 21 and how they're going, Christine, in terms of this, or do we want to talk about capital next?
No, I think we can move on to capital.
Okay.
Can I just ask a question? So,
Yeah.
so this is, I guess we discussed this actually the last time, but the money that come in from the state that is more than our budget,
Mhm.
it either goes into the calculation of the tax rate or it requires a special town meeting to move it into the prior year's budget or the current budget.
Right, so you would be having a special town meeting to increase the appropriation for the school department budget using the additional revenue that came in. If there's no, if Megan, there's no special town meeting, then that additional revenue would result in a lower tax rate and a break to our residents.
So when this presentation is made on the 10th,
Mhm.
what will that show the alternative if that money is not available, or in
So-
an accounting of where it stands as of the current, given all the activity with this, and I mean, the school committee knows this, but there's so much going on with the schools that going for a special town meeting it would seem to me that that's the last recourse we should be looking to. That's
So-
just my opinion. I'm just throwing that out there, but it just seems to me that right now, under these circumstances, and someone saying, okay, otherwise, and particularly if we have to be transparent, which we have to be, and say, alternatively, your tax rate will go down. And I think the other piece is that we're betting that, we're thinking that there will not be a COVID package after the election. Because the issue is at 12/31, it goes away.
12:30.
Right, okay, I'm sorry.
Yep.
I
Yeah,
think-
they
Keep
take
reminding
a-
me, if I go to 12:31, I'm in trouble, so.
Okay, that's why they pay you the big bucks.
I'm just the date keeper. So what we've been doing since that meeting on Friday is try and figure out the best possible way to meet everybody's needs. And we're going to present all of these scenarios. We'll be working on that all next week and have it prepared and discuss that with everybody before the 10th, what our suggestions and recommendations will be that night.
Yeah, I'm just anticipating that this is going to be, this year is going to be impossible, but we're going to have to make it possible. So, this is going to be this is the first of many, many tough discussions, I guess is just my observation. I'll go back on mute.
You don't have to go back on mute. You always have a very good.
Well, I mean, it just seems, when you hear it and you see everything else, every other alternative needs to be exhausted from my perspective.
And I think Bob just quickly to say, like, if you think about it, so let's just say, like, randomly in the past, okay, so like a department would go over budget because trees fell down and they had to clean them up, or they had to pay a bunch of other expenses they didn't expense. Like, that was what our reserve fund is for. And in years past, there's been times we've used up the entire reserve fund, and then there's times that we didn't use very much of it, like last year. But there's only $150,000 in it. And I think that part of what the schools is coming forward and saying is that they expect that this is going to be way more than the 150 that's in the reserve fund. So when we're talking about the fact that the local aid was like 580, looking at something that's going to help with their budget more than typically the reserve fund. And I think that those are the kinds of scenarios. I think if they were going to come and say, we think we're only going to be $100,000 off, then maybe we have a conversation about waiting and seeing what happens and use the reserve fund. But maybe that's not where they're at, which is why we need to see this whole packet and all the options, I think.
No, I agree. I'm not trying to prejudge it
Yeah.
without seeing the detail. I'm just saying the detail is gonna have to be really, really tight. As tight as possibly can, given the date. I understand that, but I just say that, yeah, that's, I mean, the things you wrote down there, when I talked about the revolving fund and the stabilization fund and the reserve fund and the cash, capital funding. I mean, we just got this, that's all in addition to starting at zero. So, as Ed asked the question, yeah, we were in a big hole when we started this thing last year.
Yeah.
And circumstances have only gotten worse.
Yeah. Ed, did you have something you wanted to say?
Well, I was just thinking that, and maybe this is for Mike. So Mike, you know what you've spent already year to date, about 700,000, and you're projecting 20,000 to 30,000 per week. So I assume for the selectmen, you're gonna project how much of that incremental chapter 70 you're going to need, whether it's going to be all of it or part of it, so that we really know, what's going on with those funds, how much we're going to need.
So we're actually doing that for the state. So we have a spreadsheet already that's being put together right now, because the state is going to do an audit on all COVID-19 expenses. Excuse me. So we are already putting that spreadsheet together. We have to submit that spreadsheet to the state by November 11th.
All right. And
We'll have that information.
we had $1.2 million to begin with. Is that what we had in the town side in total?
Yeah, we had $1.2 million in CARES. We have money that has come in through FEMA. And then Mike, you had the 101 grant, correct?
Yeah, which is about $500,000 in that one.
So, yeah, so I guess we'll see a schedule that has all of those revenue sources versus the projected expenses.
Yep. So that's what we're putting together right now for the state.
Got it. Thank you.
So Christine, just so I can understand the how this rolls. So on November 10th,
Mhm.
the school committee will request from the Board of Selectmen that a special town meeting be held as this item on the agenda.
Correct.
Okay, so on November 10th, if the selectmen say, if they approve it, then when will the town meeting be held?
So given when we need to set the tax rate, we would be looking at most likely the day after Thanksgiving, either that Friday or Saturday.
Wow. So 2 weeks later, in 2
Yeah,
weeks.
so you need 14 days to call a special town meeting.
And in that town, and then in that period of time, the town needs to be educated on this, and the warrant committee is going to have to opine.
Correct.
Yes. Which means,
So that's
might
another,
need
I was just gonna say that it would seem like, as we've done in the past, that this preparation of information should be done in parallel, I would think, with some information. I mean, that's not very much time to be able to evaluate and opine in the town meeting, right?
Christine, when do you think that the packet will be ready for the selectmen? Is it going to be ready like on the 9th, or have they requested to have it?
They like to receive it in their packet the Thursday before the meeting. So it'll be that Thursday or Friday before the 10th.
So that's like the 5th.
So it'll be the 5th or the 6th, they'll get it.
So
if we can prepare all of that sooner, obviously we'll get it to you sooner as well.
I guess what I'm thinking is that, to your point, Bob, if we just go into this assuming that on the 10th they schedule the town meeting, and that we're gonna have to prep for that. That probably what we're gonna wanna do is if we're gonna have that meeting on the 10th, we might wanna have a meeting for ourselves later that week and the next week so that we can get a couple of meetings in.
All right, and the selectmen going to expect anything from us on the 10th?
No, I think the discussion on the 10th will be a discussion with the school committee and the Board of Selectmen, and then there will be a vote whether or not to call the special town meeting.
Right, and then if they vote to call it, then we have to start to opine and form our discussion so we can vote on how we're gonna recommend. So,
Correct.
which is why I think it's important that if we're all there and listening on the 10th, we won't have to have another meeting to be able to have people make their presentations for it. Like that will be the 10th.
Correct.
And if we do another meeting, if we can do another meeting later that week, maybe on like Thursday or something, we could at least have a debrief discussion between all of us and then maybe take the weekend to think about it and do some more research and then meet again the next week and potentially vote then, because then we can get our vote in a week before if something has to be published, if that's even possible.
The risk of having the selectmen approve the town meeting and the warrant committee not being unanimously in agreement with this action would be a little risky. I just think that given the tempo in the town, I mean, as a one individual, but who's been observing all these discussions, the appetite for this will be very challenging. Is it a majority or is it 2/3, Christine?
To call the meeting?
No, to approve the.
Change the budget.
To approve, it's gonna need a 2/3. Right? I'll have to go, let me confirm that for you because you're not. Let me confirm that for you, but I believe it's gonna be a 2/3.
Well, I mean, that's important. I just think, again, I don't want to be Debbie Downer here, but I see this as a high risk proposition. And at 2/3, I think that's my opinion. But the reason I'm saying that is that, if we could have my perspective would be if the warrant committee had any perspective on this prior to the selectmen's meeting, if that's possible, without putting.
So, to your point, if we get it that Thursday, Friday, 5th or 6th, Sharon, what about a meeting on the 9th, that Monday, to
That's fine.
review
That's
amongst
fine.
ourselves?
I mean, I don't know if everybody agrees with me or not. I'm just expressing my opinion. I like to hear what other people think.
Just playing that out, Bob, buddy, assume that you didn't get the 2/3 and it fails. So, the schools and the town still has to buy all of this PPE, and where do we get the funds?
Well,
I
so
guess, what is a fallback position?
I think Michael and I need to sit down because we still have CARES money that we need to figure out what we're going to expend out of that so that we can finish that up for December 30th.
Right.
So I think we need to have all of that information to you before the 10th.
Well, yeah, I mean, Ed, to your point, that's exactly what the question's going to be at the town meeting.
Right.
And if we don't have an answer, it's going to be, I mean, there
We
might
have
be,
to find the money.
right. Or it might be, we think that we're hopeful, hope not a strategy, but hopeful that there'll be a CARES new plan, I mean, there's a whole bunch of different things, but my point that I'm trying to make, and then I'll stop pushing it, but that I think the appetite for any of this is very low across the town, and it's going to be the first of a number of town meetings ending with the Dale Street School. So I think we have to be, I know everybody is, but we need to be very cautious about going forward and asking for anything outside of that's just my opinion for what it's worth.
how do people feel about if we're able to get the packet on the 5th for us having a pre-meeting on the 9th?
I think that's a grand idea.
Does that work for people in their schedules? To pencil in something for the 9th?
Yeah.
Yeah, that can work.
Okay.
So our next meeting would be in 2 weeks.
Yes, I guess unless there's, unless they're able to have information available before then, I think it would be good that if Christine's working towards getting a packet to the selectmen on the, I think it would be good for all of us to have that in hand to digest it before we talk about it on the 9th.
Absolutely.
So why don't we put that in there for the 9th, and then we'll meet on the 10th, and then we'll also meet on the 17th, the next Tuesday. If that works for people.
Yeah.
And I guess we should probably pencil in at least another one just in case. Because if we're talking about potentially doing that, if there's a special town meeting on the 27th or 28th, we might want to assume that we're going to meet on the 17th and another time, either later that week or the beginning of the next week. I guess it depends, Christine, on when you feel like we would have to vote by.
I mean, the ability for me, if they call a special town meeting, to get something out, published, a warrant report in writing and in people's hands 7 days before the town meeting is just impossible.
I don't know why you feel that way.
I know. I'm like a Debbie Downer today. But yeah, there's no way we can mail something out. It would have to be distributed online and handed out at town meeting, but it's a really, really tight time frame. So that's why we were looking at all possible scenarios of how we can make fiscal year 21 work for everybody.
Right. Okay. Well, why don't we at least pencil in for us the 9th, 10th, 17th, and 24th just for kicks?
Sharon, you're saying 17th, that's a Tuesday. We usually meet Mondays. Do you want 16? Do you want to?
No, we were going to try to go to Tuesdays because Mondays
Okay.
are like downer days. But if that's not good for people, I mean, I can honestly do any night of the week right now. So
Sharon, what dates are we looking at?
so we were talking about the 9th and the 10th of November. So 9th
Yeah,
the packet, and then the 10th, the joint meeting. And then I was suggesting the 17th and the 24th, but I honestly could do the 16th and the 23rd if that's better for people. Because Christine,
17th and the 24th work for me. I just have a conflict on the 9th, but maybe I might go on earlier, and be
Yeah.
late for the 9th meeting, so. But I'm free on the 17th and the 24th and the 10th.
okay.
I am as well.
You, Amanda,
I
you are
am.
Yeah.
too? Do those work for you, Newton?
Yes.
Okay. And Jeremy, do they work for you? Or are you on your other town meeting Zoom?
He's got multi-Zooms going.
I know he's got multi-Zooms going.
I'm
Yeah,
so
those
impressed.
2 dates work. Yeah.
Those work for you? Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Bouncing back and forth here.
Okay, no, that's fine. And so, all right, why don't we plan on those? And if for some reason we feel like we have to talk even more, we can toss in another one, but hopefully that's enough. Okay, does anybody have any other questions on that, or do we want to talk about capital? Because that's another fun topic.
Is there a plan? Is there a third option?
I know.
Yeah, no, I know.
Watch the World
So-
Series.
I know. Well, so for capital, I'm just going to give you kind of a high level overview of what happened at our meeting, which was kind of as thoroughly happy as this one, which is why we're meeting again this week. I mean, basically, as we had talked about last year, the real hope for capital last year, before the world got all germified was that we were going to try to do a capital stabilization fund, and we were going to talk about maybe funding it with $1 million to be able to have a plan going forward. And then that didn't happen. We're still not talking about doing that because the capital budget committee, in our first discussion last week about it, felt the same way, and that we need the fund, we need to have the plan that we have, but funding it with an override does not feel right now. So what we're going to be talking about this week when we meet is to go through that list that was in the spreadsheet that Nick showed and decide from a capital budget committee perspective, what items in that $1.5 million list are things that we have to have. And the initial discussion that we had last week was that we cannot just say we're only going to do the $100,000 worth of leases, because that's why we've gotten ourselves into so much trouble. So it's about what other things could we maybe do as leases? How else can we be creative? Is there different ways to fund some of these things? And say we're able to knock that list down even by half. We're talking $750,000, and where are we going to get it? And is the way we're going to get it, is it going to be some kind of combination of asking for free cash? Is it going to be asking everybody to dip a couple % into their budgets and take it out of everybody's operating to a degree to fund capital? I don't know. But we figured that the first step was that the capital budget committee needs to try to look at that list of $1.5 million worth of things and determine what they want to go to the town and ask for them to do. And so once we have that list, then we have to have a greater discussion about how in the world are we going to pay for that. And I don't think anybody knows the answer to door B. So we figured we needed to start on door 1. So that was pretty much our entire capital budget committee for an hour last week, was deciding that we needed to decide what we want.
That's just, you have to preface it, but it was 7 a.m. So
It was 7
we were all a little rusty at the 7 a.m. meeting.
Yes, and we have 2 brand new members of the capital budget committee, which is great. And I thoroughly loved Megan's comment about how she did not read the memo that the meetings are at 7 a.m.
Yeah, she might have joined the Conservation Commission instead if she knew that.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's kind of where we're at. So the hope is that my guess is probably as this committee goes forward, I'll give you updates on capital, but we probably won't dive a lot into that until after we get past this chapter 70 stuff that we're talking about now, because the capital is going to be a much bigger nut in how we fund when we're already starting off at a baseline with everybody flat. And just for people to take in their contractual increases this year, their cuts if they have to be flat. So just keep that in the back of your mind, that the capital budget committee is going to come forward with a number that's bigger than 100,000, and probably strongly ask that we find a way to fund it. So we'll just wait. But that's where that stands. Not super rosy. Do you have anything else to say about that, Christine?
No. No. Well, I guess that goes to Newton's question as to why we haven't met with the department heads yet, because we've been trying to decide what we were doing with this capital before we went to them. I don't want to keep going back to them to say, level fund, then cut this to make capital. I want to have one conversation that really encapsulates everything we're trying to talk about and what we're trying to do.
So yeah, I mean, I think that if we don't get through the whole list with capital budget this week, we'll schedule another one for probably next week. We're just going to try to stay on top of it until the capital budget committee feels strongly about the final list they come up with. So unless anybody has anything else, that completes the super fancy agenda for tonight. Did you have anything else you wanted to add, Christine, or?
No, I have nothing else this evening.
Okay. Well, I really wish we were in person because I feel like this was a meeting that we all could have used chocolate for.
Right.
I was thinking the exact same thing. Sharon.
Yeah, you read my mind.
So maybe on the 9th, everybody come to the meeting with your own dish of chocolate. Okay. See? All right. Good job, Bob. Yeah. So
This was some chocolate from Seattle chocolate that my daughter brought home.
oh, see, nice.
Highly recommend it,
Yeah. See.
particularly the blackberry cream.
Ah. Well, see,
Share it, but I only have 2 left, so.
well, I suppose the joy of being the chair of this committee is that I knew going in how fun this was going to be tonight, that I prepped and ate a couple of pieces of chocolate before it started.
So if we hadn't have cut the warrant committee's $300 budget, we could have sent you all a small bag of candy, but you have no budget. So that's not available. And I know how you feel about my selectmen's downtown improvement fund. So we'll just leave it at that.
There you go. There you go. All right. Well, so on that happy note, then I think that what we'll do is we will just wait until we get a packet from Christine for the selectmen's meeting. Okay. And if anybody has any questions in the meantime, reach out. And if not, do we have a motion to?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a
Second.
second? Everybody wants to second. All right. Newton,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
Jeremy.
Yes.
All right.
Hasta luego.
Here we go. 8:09. Everyone have a very nice night.